Hey, happy Friday. What a week it's been. We got so much to go over here. We're going to talk a little bit about the actions the Fed took on the interest rates yesterday. Is it a great thing for us? Gen AI is transforming so much, but especially marketing and technical marketing at that. And you ever hear that song, AI Saves the Radio Star? Well, probably not, but we're going to talk more about that. You're watching Techstrong, gang. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday to you. It's Alan Schimmel for Techstrong. It has been quite a week. Craziness in the Middle East. We've got actions by the Fed that may or may not impact you. And of course, AI is ever present and working its way through things. We're going to discuss all this and more with our gang today. We've got, a lot of the usuals on our gang. Let me introduce them to you. Sitting out, and I guess he's back from Dreamforce now, but our Silicon Valley beat reporter, editor extraordinaire, Jon Swartz. Hey, John, welcome. I hope it was a great Dreamforce.
Hey, Alan. It was good. It was action-packed. Hey, yesterday you mentioned, you referred to me as the czar of Silicon Valley. I actually like that because it reminds me Mike Fratello was the czar of the telestrator, according to the great Marv Albert. So I will take that any day. So thank you for doing that yesterday.
Absolutely. So that's a little Nick history right there, right?
Uh-huh.
Marv Albert and Mike Fratello. And I do remember him calling the czar of the telestrator. I was going to call you czar today, but you had all those Bolshevik kind of inferences, and I'm
more of a pauper. So
yeah, it's an election season after all. We got to be careful. There's already one candidate being called comrade.
Yes,
but let's not go there. Anyway, I did. But next, joining us also in Silicon Valley, she is the gal or woman with the know-how for marketing. She has her own marketing podcast that y'all should follow, but she's also a regular gang member and a member of the Futurum team. It's our own Lisa Martin. Hey, Lisa, welcome.
Alan, great to see you in the gang today. I'm excited to dig into these topics.
Absolutely. But in case I forget later, how can people, what your podcast, how can they follow you, the name, give them a little quick
It's called
info.
Marketing, Art, and Science. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on the Futurum Group's media page and YouTube.
Very cool. Excellent. All right. Also joining us from Colorado, he's our CTO and Futurum Group CTA and regular here, my friend Mitchell Ashley. Hey, Mitch, how's it going with you?
Hey, happy 50-point rate cut week to everybody. Good to see you all.
Yeah. 0.5. Anyway, Mitch, I feel like I've seen you in the same place for 3 days already. I don't know. Have you lost your wanderlust?
I haven't moved.
Basically, yeah. I
sleep in this chair.
I don't know what you
slap on a little.
Could be like that Wall-E kind of movie, something where you just have that chair that moves you around. I don't know.
This is my avatar. It's not really me.
Or it's an AI person, right? And then joining us in between his golf games and Yankee tickets and everything else, enjoying his life in New York, our Chief Content Officer, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm good. I cannot say there's absolute correlation and causation here, but I returned to New York and the Yankees are in the playoffs. So I got to say.
Okay. When you're a Yankee fan, it's only World Series wins that count.
Sure.
They've been in the playoffs for 3-4 years in a row now. It's time. It's time. I think the last one was
2009, correct? Yes.
Yeah, 2009. We're ready. But anyway, hope springs eternal here in the fall as we head into a baseball playoff season. But let's turn. I mean, it's, as I mentioned, there's been no lack of news and topics this week for us to dive into on this Friday show. I wanted to kick it off though with, it's all about the economy, stupid, right? Someone got elected saying that once, and it is still. And the Fed took a bold move yesterday, though from Wall Street's reaction, maybe they had figured it in already. I don't know. But John, you're good at these things.
Yeah, I mean, we had Yeah, we had some factors. I mean, what we want to talk about is what the lower interest rates might mean for IT. So just kind of to step back, as we all know, inflation is down and the labor market is softening. So we got this 0.5-point reduction. And here are some of the factors that also contributed to it. Hiring and wage growth has slowed. The number of job openings per worker has dropped. Job search times are lengthening. The number of workers settling for part-time work when they prefer full-time employment has risen. We talked about it yesterday. There have been a recent degree of layoffs at Cisco, Intel, Google, you name it. We just talked about some friends of ours who had lost their jobs, unfortunately, at Cisco. So the concept here is lower interest rates are aimed at easing those trends by making it less expensive for businesses and households to borrow and therefore spend more freely. And now, as our current and resident economic czar, Alan, what does this mean, do you think, not just for IT, but writ large?
Well, I think there's a couple of things here, right? I think number one, you got to dispel the myth that this was done for political reasons. And this is why it's so important that we have a Fed that is over and above politics, over and above political appointments. It needs to be independent because we needed this 0.5-point decrease more than anything, right? A 1/4 point would have been a huge disappointment. I think the other thing you didn't mention, John, is in addition to the 0.5-point decrease, the Fed signaled that they expect to do 2 more decreases this calendar year. So you're talking about bringing it down a full point, probably their 1/4 point, unless stuff really hits the Fed.
Now, can I interject something really quick? Can I interject something really quickly? You mentioned
Sure.
This is not done for political reasons. And I think these decisions are usually done by a 12-person panel.
Yes, the Federal Reserve Board.
There are a lot of... Right. So I just want to point that out too. Exactly. Sorry to interrupt.
But, though the chairman is a political appointment, it was purposely set up to be outside of government. It needs to be. But that being said, we're talking about a full point between now and December or the end of the year decrease. And that's substantial, right? It's going to affect people's credit card rates. And a lot of people, it's funny, we were all afloat, meaning consumers, we're afloat in cash during COVID because of all the tax incentives and programs they put in place. And many of us increased our credit because of that cash on hand. We were able to get more credit. But the nature of the beast is you get more credit, you use more credit. And so a lot of people are carrying balances where maybe they weren't before. And they were paying, pretty high rates, 25, 29% rates on credit cards. So when you see interest rates starts to come down, it affects our credit card rates. It affects your car loan rates. Hey, I've got to lease a new car in November. I'm actually tickled that maybe the rates will come down. And the biggest thing, housing, mortgages. That's for the world at large. But John, as it affects our world, this is all about, our world, meaning the tech sector. We had a crash, right? The VC market damn near dried up if you didn't have an AI in your name, right? And so many of these companies that had done major rounds in 2019, 2020, even 2021, they couldn't afford it. The average startup raises enough money for 12 to 18 months because the thought is in 12 to 18 months, the game changes for them. They've doubled in size, tripled in size. They've got scale. They got more customers and they raise more money at a higher valuation. Well, they couldn't do that over the last 2.5 years. They were being told by their board, hey, if you're going to raise money right now, it's going to be a haircut round. You're going to lose valuation. So don't raise money. Keep, hoard your cash. And they tightened up, cut your expenses. They laid people off. And so we saw this tightening that we didn't see in the wider market, right? In the wider market, it was inflation, but people still had cash and the job market was strong. Our market got cut. So I'm hoping that even more than this 1% by the end of the year, the 0.5% that they did yesterday, that it's it's a game changer in terms of the vibe, in terms of the attitude, in terms of the atmosphere. People are optimistic, positive, optimistic, whatever rhymes with that. And we want to do things and move forward and start investing in our tech again, because there's so much great stuff. I'm sorry, go ahead.
There was kind of a dark cloud over Silicon Valley. There has been one for at least a year, maybe 18 months. There's this anxiety over a recession, continuing layoffs. And we saw with the case of Intel in particular, and also Cisco, where they would announce a round of layoffs and then proceed to have another major round. So there are a lot of people having a hard time finding work as well, those who got laid off. I just want to kind of kick it maybe to Lisa about this. And I mean, I think you see or share the kind of same feeling of people who have jobs feel, especially out here, very fortunate to be employed.
Definitely. I, like you, had friends that were affected by the Cisco layoffs this week, Intel, Google, as you mentioned. It's a challenging time for tech workers. There's a lot of fear going on because those that I know that have been laid off over the summer are having a hard time finding jobs. So it's a challenging time. I hope that the Fed injects a little shot in the arm to tech from a hiring perspective. I'm cautiously optimistic about that, but it's definitely been tough times in the Valley for the last year or so, as you mentioned, Jon. I see it, I feel it. My network feels it as well. So I think the news that came out this week from the Fed is, I want to believe that it's a shot in the arm from a hiring perspective, and organizations will leverage some of the hires they've made in data science and AI, for example, data analytics, to really become much more efficient and streamlined in their operations.
Hey, Lisa,
Can you guys connect some dots for me a little bit? Because one of the things you always hear is like the Fed sneezed, the market caught pneumonia, and then marketing budgets dropped through the floor. So what exactly is the connection between these things? Why is marketing budget so dependent upon what happens on Wall Street and what's going on with the Fed? Because I hear this conversation all the time.
Yeah, that's a great point. Something that I don't have a lot of background on why they're so directly tied, but they are. It's been, I'd say the last 23 and 24 have been challenging from a marketing perspective. A lot of the CMOs that I talk to don't have incremental budget to spend on cool projects that are going to help differentiate themselves. I haven't talked to anybody yet since the Fed cut the rate this week. So I'm curious to understand what that relation is, Mike, to your point. But we've been feeling that for years now. And it's something that we at Futurum want to understand. Given the budget constraints, how can we be of best help to organizations from a marketing perspective, whether it's helping them with brand voice, content creation, things like that will help them just be more efficient, or understanding how emerging technologies like Gen AI can help them be far more efficient, because the efficiency stories in marketing with Gen AI are prolific.
I think
that kind of feeds into the anxiety. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have this pet theory that a lot of it is not related, and it's just a knee-jerk reaction. And the first thing that companies cut is marketing, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then sales decline, and then they get fewer leads, and then they wind up, essentially fulfilling the prophecy that they could have avoided if they just didn't randomly always cut marketing first. But that's just me.
Well, there's interesting behavior, because they also change what we want from marketing. We want middle of funnel leads. We don't want top of funnel leads. There's all these behavior changes, and
yes,
you just don't flip a switch to start doing that, right? You have to get those leads different ways. I think one of the things to look about this, the market didn't react heavily about this because they say it's baked in also in the mortgage rates. But the consumer price index went down quite a bit from the 6% range into the 2% range. And in looking at it, kind of, if you look at it farther, I think what will have the biggest impact is a continuing downgrade of the interest rate, because that starts to free up cash. I mean, really, we've been riding this kind of weird interest rate thing since 2008, right? Into recovering from that, and then we went into COVID, and now we hit this inflationary period. Unfortunately, then that's gone down too. So one of the behaviors by not just marketing, but really all spend that we've seen is it's on a quarter by quarter basis. You don't get your budget for the year, whether it's IT or what marketing or whatever it is. And just so that you can correct directionally.
Well, it's volatility is what you're referring to, Mitch.
Exactly. And, in some ways, that's not a bad behavior to have anyway, right? Just,
Well, no, I disagree.
Oh, okay.
I think one of the problems we have, especially in public companies, and having helped, a company go public and sat in on those exec meetings, is you can't manage your company quarter to quarter and achieve your long-term goals.
There are investments definitely that take longer than a quarter.
Right. Sometimes you've got to just, hey, I know this isn't going to help me this quarter, but this is going to pay off. This is strategic. And otherwise you drive your ship like you're sailing in the America's Cup, tacking left to right to left, back and forth. I think less volatility, more certainty. And you know what? Our economy is a consumer confidence-based economy. The consumer drives our economy, even in the tech sector. And when they feel good, like things are getting better and the price of eggs are down, if they're not contaminated or something, they feel good, they spend money, and I don't want to use the word trickle down, but it gets spread all over the economy, and we're going to see it. But I want to bring this back to IT for a second. My feeling, and this is purely subjective, is that a lot of these cuts have impacted the, let's call it softer skilled folks, the marketing people, the product marketing, much more than the truly, truly technical engineering staff, right? And I'm watching on LinkedIn my friends writing and people who've just been through this saying, hey, man, you better buckle in. It may be 8 or 9 months before you find a job. That's how long it took me. And that's a long time to be without a steady paycheck for a lot of people. So, Lisa,
I have two. Yeah, I have two.
John, go ahead.
Friends who are. Oh yeah, I have two friends, both highly skilled. They're older, so ageism does play a big part out here.
Oh, absolutely.
But they've been looking for 8 to 9 months. One expects it will take a year. And I think feeding into the fear, and we alluded to it, is the operational efficiencies that our companies are looking for. And in a certain sense, like with a Meta or even an Apple, they were moving people out because they want to make this pivot or shift to AI. So not only are they doing that, but then the current workforce is concerned about AI and the impact on their job and being displaced. And I have to say, there was a talk, we talked about this yesterday, but during their sit down, there's this kind of sinister undertone to Benioff and Jensen Wang talking about how AI agents would be doing the work of people and making their jobs easier, the people's jobs easier. But it kind of creeps into your mind that as that AI gets smarter, those agents might become the more permanent employees. It's a little bit of a skepticism on my part, but it's something that I conceivably can see happening in the next several years.
Sure. Lisa, I thought you were going to say something when John had started to know about marketing, it impacts heavier on the marketing teams.
Yeah. Well, what we see is, depending on the age and the maturation of the organization, marketing's priority differs. In younger, less mature organizations, it's all about sales and engineering. In more mature organizations, I talk with a lot of CMOs who have done a lot to strengthen the sales relationships there, to really give them visibility into their customer behavior like they've never had before. So we're seeing a lot of synergies there. But I also think from an AI perspective, we're seeing a lot of efficiencies gained. And agentic AI is going to be an interesting one to watch, to see, to John's point, from an editorial perspective, is it going to be able to come in and replace some of those humans? That's something that I've got my eye on, and I'm talking with marketers about that right now to understand what they project the impact might be.
Absolutely.
Another thing, just one more thing, Alan, that's changed, having gone through this inflationary tightening up of cash for startups and things like that. A lot of companies have gotten acquired because of that cash situation. There's been a roll up that. I know that I don't think it was announced this way publicly, but kind of some inside information that I've gotten about layoffs at IBM. Some of the companies are going through this. Okay, we're kind of fat, drunk, and happy, and bought all these companies. Now, what do we really need? What do we really keep? And culling out the companies the acquisitions that they acquired over time. So I think
they
that's
just hold on to the IP.
Yeah, hang on to the IP. Which happens anyway sometimes. But when you're at that period of, okay, we're making a shift now, do we really carry that cost anymore? So that's, I think, dipping more into the technical staff, the higher skilled staff, as well as softer skills.
Absolutely. Hey, we got to move on, but I'll just tie the bow on this. It's a good thing the Fed did this. I hope they carry through on the rest of the year. I think it'll take time to percolate through the economy, but it's a good thing, and maybe happy days are on the way. We'll see. We're going to take a break on Techstrong, gang. We're going to come back and talk about, we touched on it already, Gen AI transforming marketing, and specifically technical marketing. You're watching Techstrong, gang.
In a world where every line of code powers the future, every keystroke can introduce new threats. As software evolves, so must security. It's time to rethink how we protect our digital world. Join the leaders in DevSecOps and AI at the OpenText DevSecOps Virtual Summit on September 24th. Discover how innovation is transforming software delivery, faster, more secure, and smarter. From AI-driven security to the truth behind cloud security, get the insights that will keep you ahead of the curve. Don't just watch the future unfold. Be part of it. Register now and secure your place in tomorrow's world.
All right, folks, we're back. And we're going to talk about Gen AI and technical marketing specifically. There's a startup out there called Cortex Click, and they have a way of taking large language models that have been specifically trained to look at documentation and the original writings and the code produced by developers, and turning that into more sophisticated technical marketing documents, including blogs and all kinds of things. And folks that I've talked to about this are excited because basically most of the folks who write this code hate writing in general, but the current level of AI tools aren't very good for technical marketing. And on the one hand, those guys are thrilled. So that's the left side of the brain. The right side of the brain, the marketing people who have historically written that content for those folks are a little, shall we say, plus and minus on this. They kind of don't really like trying to figure out what all this stuff is saying. So the tool is going to help them, but everybody's having that moment, as we just said in the last block, worrying about where their cheese is going to move. Lisa, what's your take on all of this? Is technical marketing going to become, easier, more fun for fewer people? What happens?
I'm pro this, Mike. I think it's a great thing. I think you brought up a great point. The developers and the DevOps teams they support don't like writing the documentation and spending time on that. So the ability to use generative AI to help them get content farther along, I think is a great thing from an efficiency perspective, gets them back to doing the core jobs that they want to be doing. On the marketing side, I see it as an advantage. For marketers that don't have a ton of technical expertise on the products that they're writing about, they can use tools like what is it? Cortex Click is doing to help ensure that content's being written. You mentioned blog posts, documentation of other types as well, to ensure it's aligned with brand voice, which is really critical when we're talking about using AI from a marketing perspective, is ensuring that the brand's voice is represented. But I do think that it will be it could be a partnership between general marketers, content creators, and technical marketing folks to be able to create documentation that is really ideal and advantageous for the end user customer, generate that content faster than the end user customer gets it, which goes a long way to customer satisfaction and things like that. So I see it as a good alignment between marketing and technical marketing, and an opportunity.
Agreed. Look, I think we've got to make clear to, and our audience, I probably understands this, right? Technical marketing, software documentation specifically, is a very specific skill set. Very specific. Mitch, when we were at Still Secure, we had Carla Griffith. She was a great technical. You're on mute. She was a great technical documentation.
She was. Carla's fantastic.
Yeah. But for many organizations, that piece of it, the documenting the software or documenting, the process, is sort of the truly behind the caboose on the train. Whatever comes after the caboose, that's technical writing.
That would be the can.
Yeah. And in today's world, look, how many of us read software or how many bother to even look at software documentation, right? Because if I have to read the manual, it's no effing good, right? That was kind of the motto for a long time. And then today, in today's world, let me see if there's a YouTube or a TikTok on this that explains it. I'm not going to read no documents. And so I think it's almost been downgraded. And with that downgrade, you see less of the talents of the people like a Carla doing it. So to me, this cries out for an AI kind of solution. Maybe it'll make it better and more people will use it. I don't know. Or maybe it's a thing that's time has come and we should just do video software.
Well, I was thinking about that too, because the process for so long was have someone like Carla, a writer, technical writer, interview the developers and have them describe how it works or what are the information they need to complete their documentation. And it wasn't always the developers writing the technical documentation. If you had, a documentation person. I agree. I don't think we need the big binders of, thick binder of documentation anymore. What I'm excited about is how this material can be turned into other uses. Like, can you create the tutorial? I'd like it to write the tutorial for the end user. Write the install instructions that go on the website. Here's a scenario. Now write the documentation about how you would go down that path and lead people to it. That would be really good because that's the next step beyond just documenting what the software technically does, functionally does, is how do you put it in a form that now someone will learn from and consume it, not just read a big, thick document. That is what I think would really turn the screws on this. But as someone who was always having to write the technical 1 or 2 pagers, thank God, I'm glad I don't want to do any more of those. So Alan always stuck me with that job.
I never stuck you with it. It was your job. That's
what you always said.
I would just point out it takes a well-written script to create a video. So, these videos don't magically happen
on their own. Yeah.
I think AI can help there too.
Yeah, that'll take care of things.
You mentioned the consumption part, Mitch, which is incredibly important because we know that the appetite for consumption of content is changing a lot. And one of the things that's cool with Gen AI is the ability to create video content from scripts, like Mike, you were saying. So it's going to be interesting to see how organizations are shifting the types of content they're creating. What do the consumers want to consume? What's the fastest, easiest way to get this information understood so that they can start using the software and impacting their business? But I like the consumption piece. I think that's one that we're going to have to be really focusing on to see how does that needle move with this change.
I think the other side of the coin is, and this is the same way with AI-generated software, if the volume of how much of that documentation or content is being created increases, we're still in an age where you can't just put it out there. You've got to have someone review it for accuracy, make sure it's meets voice, all kinds of things. So if we doubled or tripled how much content that we're creating, because we can, may also because the software is changing more quickly because of things like DevOps, et cetera. It's more people to review that stuff, and you've got to have that talent there. So it's not like it's completely being displaced because something else is writing it. You still have to validate it. It's useful and it's accurate and it is what you want as an outcome.
So Mitch, which is worse, putting together the technical documentation or maybe going to the dentist for a root canal? I rank those for me.
Well, so I'd say I've had 2 root canals and they weren't so bad, but documentation, damn, I don't want to go back there.
Like everything else in life, it depends on what drugs they give you.
Yes, that's right. That pain was over in a few days. Documentation never stopped.
Absolutely. Anyway, hey, we need to, this is AI is changing everything, and this is I think a low hanging fruit. We're going to take a break. We're coming back, and we've got that famous song, if you could put it in your head, Gen AI saves the radio star, or something like that. You're watching Techstrong, gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
All right, folks, and we're back. And, we report on all these conferences, and there was one for Salesforce this past week, and it's always about what the company's announcing. But every now and again, there's this kind of sidebar thing that shows up that just gets your attention. And Jon here has a report about how, AI might be applied to making radio more compelling. Jon, walk us through this.
Yes. So our friend Will.i.am, got to meet him and talk to him for about 40 minutes. Really fascinating guy. He's started something called radio.fyi. Basically, it's this interactive conversational media platform that's trying to usher radio into the AI age and offer listeners kind of this two-way communication with an AI persona to dive deeper into music, sports, talk radio, politics, pop culture. It's basically you get what you ask for. And I think it's really interesting and vital because the radio industry, especially the terrestrial one, out here in the Bay Area, we don't have really a talk radio anymore. There was a very popular station. It was a number one station for a long time called KGO, which I'm sure Lisa and I used to listen to a lot. And it went by the wayside. It's a gambling sports site now. So so I asked him about this, and he was talking about how, in a sense, he kind of wants to revitalize the whole radio sphere. And he's got a deal already with 9 stations with access to this FYI, which stands for Focus Your Ideas. And what Will wants to do is kind of delve into this area that has been kind of underserved. I mean, streaming, in a sense, has flattened a little bit. The satellite has had its run. And he wants to just basically bring us news, breaking events, on-demand information that we would be available to us not only through our car radio, and in fact, they're working on a deal with a major automaker, which hasn't happened yet, but it is coming. They want to make this available through television, radio, media companies. They also want to apply this whole business model to learning, do-it-yourself tutorials, as we talked about earlier, advertising. And we can go into deeper things of what he talked about, but he talked about this kind of influence of AI, not just on radio, but the workforce, on the hyper creatives. He is very optimistic about where things are going. He thinks we're going to have this renaissance of spiritual AI use. It kind of got deep, actually, after a while. We're talking about spiritual use versus just greed and operational efficiency. And the irony is he actually believes that the white-collar workforce is much more in danger and that the creatives actually can use this and turn this into this flourishing industry of sorts. It was kind of utopian, pie in the sky, but it was very interesting.
Jon, he's not naming the AI Max Headroom, is he?
Remember
Blast
that
from the past.
Oh my God! Yeah,
I think you might be naming it Yogi or something. Maybe talk to my Yogi.
I mean, hey, more power to him. Look, we've had this, Mike. You're up in New York now, but I don't know if you saw, 88 Radio 88. I think with CBS on the AM dial. They went kaput last month or a couple of weeks ago, and that was one of the biggest talk radios in New York. But I got to tell you something. I think talk radio's decline is a fate of their own making, because it became so much talk radio was extreme politics, right and left, frankly. And that's what people seem to log in for, to listen to your favorite nutcase or wingnut or whatever you want to call them. And that's not the talk radio I grew up with in New York. right? Where there were all kinds of great topics that were involved in talk radio. So, maybe there's a place for a good, I don't know how you define good, but maybe there is a place for talk radio, I think, in the world. Do I want it to be all AI? I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable, but maybe just because I'm old.
Maybe, one of the things, Alan, to me, talk radio, to some degree, maybe large degrees, have replaced by podcasts. That's where we kind of go to hear
exactly
those conversations.
That's true too.
And, we have our favorites that either someone recommended or we found or whatever. I don't follow 50 podcasts, but, I have maybe half a dozen that I listen to. If you applied AI to that, that might open up an exposure to more content. Well, if you like listening to this, let me share with you segments on that topic from 2 or 3 podcasts, what people are saying. So maybe it's a way to open up without you having to do the work to find stuff to get content.
Well, Mitch, you bring up a great point, because I do have a pet peeve about radio in general, right? It's the same songs over and over again. It's the same thing over and over because somebody ran an algorithm that decided that these were the 10 songs that we all needed to hear. If this thing could say, if I could tell this thing that I like this particular song, and it could actually surface other songs that were, of interest or similar or had related stories or some sort of tie together, that would be interesting, because right now I'm dependent upon, a DJ who's got a program list from somebody else that's just, going through the motions.
Well, but
it's funny, difference. Go ahead.
I was going to say, there's a difference.
I was going to say, it's interesting.
It's
ironic. John. Oh, sorry about this.
Well, no,
I'm so sorry. So it's interesting. It's about MTV. We made this reference, like the Buggles. MTV in a sense kind of saved radio or revitalized it and brought us interest in it. But eventually, I know this because when it was early 80s, I think 1980, August 1st, 1981, something like that, when it launched, I was one of the people they would call when I was living at home. I was in high school, and they would ask me to rate the music. And one of the things that killed MTV, or hurt it at least, was they had the very short rotation list. Mike was alluding to certain radio stations, you only hear like 200 songs. MTV was the same way. And it kind of got stuck in this rut. So you'd see the same song like every 90 minutes.
Right. Oh, it was the top 40
So
stuff.
They didn't expand. And I think, it was like that. And satellite, radio, people went to satellite and it was kind of restrictive, and podcasts opened it up. So it's kind of goes through this cycle. And I think he's trying to break the cycle. Who knows how successful he'll be, but it sounds intriguing and interesting, at least that he's trying this.
So I'll be nostalgic for a minute. What I remember about radio is growing up, and we used to listen to KOMA from Oklahoma City, and this is living in Nebraska. They didn't transmit that far. We only could listen to it at night because it would skip across the clouds and we'd get the signal. And we would listen because it was all, we call it classic rock now. But we would sit there with our cassette recorder ready to hit record if that song, we don't have this one yet,
Yeah, we do it all the time.
Fun. It was great.
It was a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I listened to WLIR 92.7 on your dial. Long gone. But Mitch and gang, there's a difference between music and talk. And I'm going to tell you, Mitch, your podcast example is part of what's wrong with America. Because when you listen to podcasts or radio, whenever, you're making a choice of what you want to listen to. You decide what song or what podcast you're listening to. And what that has resulted in is reinforcement of tribal beliefs, right? The nice thing about radio, they may only have 200 songs, but 100 of them may be ones you haven't heard. There is some rotation in that 200, and you don't have control. You may wind up listening to a song that, given your own, you may not have that record in your collection. I have records still, but you may not have that song in your collection on your playlist. And that's why I like listening to radio and I'm a Sirius XM person in my car, but that's why I like listening to radio versus playing my own playlist. I have Apple Music and all the rest. I can decide exactly what songs I want. But I don't like to do that. I want to hear different stuff. And when it comes to talk radio and to podcasting, and we just reinforce our tribal beliefs, and we never break out of our own echo chambers. And we really do believe that, Haitians are eating cats or something like that. And, because we don't hear a wider audience. And I think that if this can somehow, move the needle on that, it's a damn good thing.
I just want to bring back an avatar of Wolfman Jack or Dr. Demento or some of those.
I used to love. Yeah, I know.
Wow.
Good
Oh
times.
my God.
That's awesome.
All right, Mitch, we're showing our
So
age. Let's
fantastic.
go to Mike before they retire us.
Those are wonderful.
All right,
So John, what is the user experience going to be like? So let's say I log into this thing and I'm like, hi, this is Mike, long-time listener, first-time AI caller.
Hey, Mike.
We'll say, hey, Mike, thanks for listening. You just suggest the type of music you like, the type of era you like. I'm thinking about, to me, a shout out to KSAN and KFOG, where these are stations, very kind of progressive stations, where I listened to it for the music, but I also listened to it for they did documentaries, they did music, they talked about culture, they talked about politics, and it all was kind of like a lifestyle community. And I think that's kind of what they're trying to do. Maybe you want to listen to rhythm and blues or some sort of takes you into a sphere of a type of music or livelihood or state of mind or spirituality, or what have you. And in a sense, maybe that opens your mind up to the boxes that we've all put ourselves in. I'm going to blame social media as much as anybody else, but I think podcasts have really fed into it. I think this whole idea is about experimentation, about finding out things. It's like looking at search for the first time on radio by using your voice and navigating. And one thing he talked about a lot was the great music of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, which really spoke to me. He's 49 years old, but he really believes that we were at a cultural high point, especially during the 70s, whether it be movies,
I think
music.
I agree.
And I feel strongly about that, actually. I agreed with him.
One thing we need is to bring back the radio serials. Those were fun to listen to.
Oh, wow. Shadow
good
News.
stuff.
I think he's a good influence for the creative community because, when I was looking into this, John, after reading your article that you published, first of all, I was so jealous you got to talk to him because I'm a big fan. That's awesome. But, we in tech here, the mass media is so focused on all the negative elements of AI, replacing jobs, it's this and that. But we in tech have the opportunity to see and feel and hear so many great stories of how AI is transforming the financial industry, protecting us from fraud, or helping in healthcare for faster, better diagnoses, things like that. So I think for Will.i.am's audience and the entertainment space, I think he's a good voice for AI from a positive perspective for the most part. And I think we need more awareness and more voices like that to help reach the broader audiences to understand some of the great applications that AI is already delivering.
I think Will.i.am's been that for a long time.
Oh, yeah. He's been an
Not
engineer.
just AI.
He's been thinking about
He's not just
for
some
about 20
guy
years.
who only knows his music. He's socially conscious. He's done great things.
He's an
He
innovator.
didn't say what's up with Fergie, though, did he?
No, he didn't. I should have asked him. Damn it. Hey, Lisa, what you said basically was channeling him. You probably should have met him instead of me. We were talking about things. We're talking about that. He said that the 20s, meaning the 2020s, we're going to be this journey to generative AI. In the 30s, things were going to explode. And we're going to have this awakened generation that he said will dial into the right coordinates. I kept wondering, what does that mean? And he can't wait for it to happen. But he basically mentioned the movie Star Wars. And here's a takeaway. He goes, flying cars and robots are science fiction. But what about science fact? In Star Wars, what's the most interesting innovation there is the Jedi. It's the spirituality at its highest human level. That's what we should be trying to reach. And that's what I took from that movie. And I thought that was very, very perceptive of him. And, it's kind of part of his thought process of what he's trying to do with this and other things.
Excellent. I love it. You know what? Let's end on that high note for the week, right? Jon, thanks. I wish I would have been there too. I've been a Will.i.am fan of a long time.
Great guy. Very, very engaging guy.
Absolutely. It sounds like a great time. Gang, thanks so much for joining us today. Thank you out here for watching today's Techstrong Gang. We hope you found it at least entertaining, if not informative, but hopefully both. We have a full Techstrong TV lineup following, so there's a lot of good stuff on here. Check it out. And next week was looking up to be a crazy week of good stuff. I think we're going to talk about some of the recent Mideast events of this week on Monday, so stay tuned for that. And I'm sure there'll be a good smattering of AI and DevOps and cyber and all the usual stuff. But until then, this is Alan Schimmel on behalf of Techstrong. You've just watched Techstrong Gang.
I'm Bonnie Schneider, sustainability contributor to the Techstrong Group. I'm excited to introduce you to a groundbreaking new initiative from Techstrong Research, the Sustainability Pulse Meter. The Pulse Meter offers valuable insights into how environmental responsibility factors into tech purchasing decisions for key players in the industry. Position your company as a leader in the industry and differentiate from your competitors with the Sustainability Pulse Meter, offered exclusively from Techstrong Research.